Hey everybody, we're gonna give this a shot. I've done one Facebook Live in my life before. This is number 2, so hopefully we can pull it off. We don't screw it up too bad. But welcome to the studio, quote unquote. We just got finished watching stage 1. It was not a prologue. Too long to be a prologue. It is in fact the first stage, and so we'll go Facebook Live as we record episode 1 of the Stages podcast.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
Nobody was throwing that name around. It's the stage 1 winner.
Yeah, that. Welcome back to the Stages podcast, stage 1 of the Tour de France today. Nobody threw that name around, and that was an oversight. All the stuff that I read and watched. And Geraint Thomas is not. This is a guy who's a 2-time Olympic champion. It's a very legit rider. Obviously, great against the clock. Nobody's
8th tour.
Been around.
Yeah, he's been around a while.
I did a Tour de France with him.
And
that shows you how long he's been around.
Nobody threw his name around.
Right.
That was a surprise to everybody.
Yeah. Hey, it was a day that was not without drama, and so I think for him. Back up for the riders who are trying to win the GC. They used, they looked at the day as a risky, dangerous day with the wet conditions, slick roads. But then you had these riders that saw it as an opportunity, whether it's Geraint Thomas or Tony Martin or clearly Team Sky, 4 riders in the top 7. If that's not a message, I don't know what is. And then obviously Alejandro Valverde crashes out of the race. I didn't, the coverage of his time trial was not wasn't covered that widely, so all we really saw were the highlights of the crash. But he was taking some risks.
That's big news. And before we start to break all that down, why don't you go ahead and welcome everybody to this podcast? Remind them why we're here and what's going to be different, because we listened to commentators all morning for the last several hours.
Yep.
What are you going to get that's different here?
Yes, this is. It was interesting watching because we got up early. We watched the preview show that NBC had on, and so there will be some crossover, right? Everybody has to acknowledge how much time Chris Froome put into his rivals, right? It's glaringly obvious. So we have to talk about that. I think the thing that I took away, other than Jens Voigt being nails on the chalkboard, was I think sometimes this is a tough game and it's a tough sport, and so sometimes it calls for tough analysis, and you're going to get that here. If we're going to have to call a spade, but I tell you what, day 1 was there's plenty to talk about on day 1.
All right, let's go to Geraint Thomas after the stage, and then we'll break down why there was so much drama and a name that we weren't throwing around was up there. Here he is just after the stage win, talking to reporters.
That's true.
there you go. It's not too slippery if you don't go too fast.
Right.
Yet we were watching, if you didn't get a chance to see stage 1 of the tour, literally, the bikes were just sliding out from under him very, very quickly. Like
From the first second.
Yeah, right out of the gate. But where we really noticed how slippery it was when you'd see a mechanic getting them back on the bike,
Yep.
and they were sliding around like they were walking on ice.
Yeah, I don't, when we were talking about it during the race, I don't know if it's sort of modern pavement that just kind of leaks oil. Obviously, you have a lot of vehicles on the car. You have 200 riders. Each rider has a car or two behind them, motorcycles. So these are obviously putting out oil. It's been raining in Dusseldorf, where I grew up. You're always worried about the first hour after it rains. It's been raining there for days. So theoretically, the oil on the pavement or on the surface should be gone. But clearly, those roads, as we saw when the mechanic was literally a couple times ice skating. But what happens is these obviously high speed in those conditions is a risk. But it's either the oil or it's the paint. And the way we pave roads now and paint turn areas.
Everybody's seen the Abbey Road cover for the Beatles where they're walking across that crosswalk. Right. To your point, they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, right. And through every intersection, that paint on your high-pressure tires, yep. and the moisture, well, not just puddles, yep. is just icy. And most time trials are in the city, and think about all those cars that stop at every intersection, and they're drip, yep. drip, and then the rain hits that, and it is slick.
But I think that's gone. The other key thing too is those stripes we're talking about. They're different than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They're thicker. It's one of the problems in modern cycling, right? We could talk about, and we'll see it in this race. Over the next 3 weeks, I guarantee it.
This was not a problem 15 years ago.
No,
they're not as big of a problem.
The paint would have been, but we call it sort of street furniture, or these traffic control things, whether they're planters or roundabouts or posts, or just things that control, technically control traffic. I mean, that's a problem for modern day cycling.
The other thing I can't help but talk about, and I've been saying this for several years, although I didn't have an audience, so I was just shouting to the television. It's hard to believe in this day and age that road barriers still have legs that stick out.
Yep.
And that became a factor, one. Two, when it's rainy and you're going 30 miles an hour potentially, why do they not put up hay bales in the corners?
Well, you kept asking me that during the race. I do not know. I mean, you can ask the same question about the start ramp, right?
Slick start ramp.
75% of these riders, I'm surprised nobody came off of that start ramp, but 75% of them, you could tell or could see that they were losing the back wheel.
Or coming out of their clips.
I mean, maybe we should, I don't know, have a different start ramp.
Well, it's not like you get to practice a start ramp all the time.
No, well, they do, because they do it, they do this multiple times a year, and every TT basically has a start ramp. But, I mean, you're right, and to bring up, I mean, the most glaring obvious today is Valverde. Yeah. And you were frustrated or had questions about the barriers. You're right. I mean, those barriers, when, this is going way back, and I mean in the early 90s, when Laurent Jalabert and Abdou Japarov got in it, and Jaja back in the day of no helmets, it was one of the goriest crashes I've ever seen, back when he was a sprinter, and his face hit the barrier, and there was blood everywhere. That's the same barrier in the early 90s that was in 2017. And Alejandro Valverde got a real close look at it, and in fact, my suspicion is that he not only hit his leg or his knee, very hard. I think he took it a little on the chin as well.
It's hard to tell we only had one angle from behind him, but from what I could tell, it looked like the maybe his knee slammed into the base of that barrier that's sticking out, where if there were hay bales on those sharp corners in rain, he would have just, how you just slide. The slide was okay. It's when he hit the impact.
Sliding is better than hitting.
Yeah.
But the hay bales, that's they wouldn't put hay bales there because that shortens, that narrows the corner even more. So whether, I don't know, we can all sit here and play armchair quarterback on that particular corner. It was that corner that took down quite a few riders. Not only did we lose Valverde, we lost another rider today on the very same corner out of the race. But that's just the nature of it, and when it's that slick.
I do. I just can't help but think that's the difference between losing 10, 15 seconds and getting back on the bike versus going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer. That's the big news. If you didn't see it today, the biggest shakeup.
My dark horse pick.
You had him.
My fantasy pick is out.
You looked legitimately sad when that happened.
Yeah. Well, not only I'm not trying to selfishly, I had him as a dark horse. I thought this atypical course suited him over the next 3 weeks. But if I'm Nairo Quintana and I'm Movistar, I mean, and I want to win the Tour de France, like that was a major card to play in the mountains and in the overall GC that overnight is gone. And if Chris Froome was worried about Quintana and Valverde, he's not now. And if Richie Porte was worried about those two, he's not now. So it changes. That team is sitting around the dinner table tonight going, huh, okay.
Yeah.
What now?
Right. The strategy just completely
changes everything.
changed. And you can't help but emotionally, as anybody who's been a professional cyclist at some point, knowing that a guy, you do all that preparation, all that recon, get just everything leading up to it, and 10 minutes into your Tour de France, it's over.
It's over.
For one guy out of the 198.
Yeah.
Was a name that you were throwing around. The other big story, there's many big stories, but you kept going on. Look at Team Sky. Look at Team Sky. They've got some depth.
Yeah. And part of this thing is admitting that when you miss it or when you were wrong. I didn't see this coming. I mean, I guess I don't know what had me blocked from seeing this coming, but to put 4 guys in the first 7, and if you went down in the first 20, you probably I don't want to take the time to count them. They clearly sent a message on a day that was like, you had to ride. It's long, so 14K, so you had to ride strong and fast and put in a good effort, but you had to take some. But that's a message. Like that's I guess that shouldn't be surprising, but I am surprised by that.
And it doesn't look good for Richie Porte on the heels of that. Not just his performance today, but just what he's up against team-wise.
I understand if I'm in watching the race, and what was interesting to me is Richie Porte got 5th in the Tour de France last year, and Quintana got 2nd. So Quintana started 2nd from last. Froome started last. Richie Porte chose to not start 5th from last. He chose to go up a couple of rotations out of his team's order. They put their time trial guy,
which I did not know you could do.
Right. If people think that it's just a blind draw, as Phil Liggett told us at the top of the show, the kid who went, he drew number 1. No, the team, the teams. There's a certain order of based on last year's race of which teams go in which order, and then the team selects who goes in those different spots. And I thought it was interesting that Porte decided to go earlier. Sometimes teams put a very strong time trial rider early in the day, hoping that it's dry. Right? Maybe they have a 1 hour window where it's dry or there's no wind, and he can get a good time. And then all of a sudden it starts pouring rain, the wind comes up, and everybody's on the brakes. And next thing you know, your guy's in yellow. It's a smart move. But so Porte goes early. We're watching, and you could tell he was being careful and cautious, which he should be. But I'm going to tell you, 35 seconds on Chris Froome, 47 seconds on Geraint Thomas. That's not being cautious.
Mm-hmm.
10 seconds, 15 seconds. That's cautious. I can see that. No, 35 seconds is that's I think you have to trust me. That dinner table, they're going, are the legs there? Is the form there? It's still way too early to say, but all I'm really trying to emphasize is 35 seconds on your main rival. That's not more breaks in the corners.
There's a lot of subtleties that happen during the tour and things that I didn't know. As somebody who's watched the tour for a long, long time, sitting down and watching it with Lance Armstrong, you're throwing out a lot of little things that I wouldn't even know or wouldn't even think about. And that's what we can bring to everyone here. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Froome could have started in a yellow jersey today, correct?
Correct. And I'm sure he was, ASO, the owner of the tour, who not only owns the event, they solicit the sponsors, they produce the event, they want him in a yellow jersey.
As last year's winner.
And it's his right to wear. And but they want him on the start ramp with their sponsors. Not his sponsors, but their sponsors. And he chose to not wear the yellow jersey. It could be a lot of things, right? It could be superstition, it could be just a habit. But I suspect, and I haven't totally confirmed this, but I heard that just yesterday they received, or in recent days, they received their brand new skin suits, which have, you could almost see it on TV if you're paying attention. They have these patches on the arms and the elbows and down the forearms, some sort of a wind treatment that, the race provided skin suit just doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And so he chose to wear his team kit, and one that they probably spent a lot of time and money and effort into developing with Castelli, their clothing sponsor, and ditched the maillot jaune, which I don't blame him.
Yeah. Here's something else I learned from you about a time trial, and this would apply to any of them. If you're a GC contender, you're going to go later.
Yep.
You're going to go towards the end. And it takes hours to execute, which I do have some questions about that. Like where's the director? Where are people hanging out? We should talk about all those things. I did not know, as a GC contender, you can ride in your team car and follow one of your teammates and get a good look at the course.
100. I did it every.
I had no idea.
Certainly not. I didn't do it every time. Is that your phone chirping over there?
Mine's turned off.
Whose phone is that? My goodness. Is it my phone?
Yeah.
Oh, let me mute that thing. Hold on.
It's the actual.
No, that's not my phone. That's super annoying.
Is it messaging on there?
No, I don't have. Are you kidding me? I don't have messaging. Anyways, whatever. The ghost phone. But I did it on certainly every prologue, and then if the time trial course was such a way that you could follow behind the entire TT and still get back to the start without too much hassle, I would do it every time. I'd go sit in the car with Johan and follow behind. Typically, a guy like Victor Hugo Pena, who was going to go fast, and had a similar style when it came to the corners, speed through the corners, aggression through the corners, and then obviously, Chris Froome has ridden that course dozens of times already. But it's just another look. It's a look with the barriers up. It's a look with the people
Which
down.
I hate the barriers.
Right, you hate it, and it's a look with it just gives you a level of comfort and confidence that you might be sitting on your trainer going, I wonder what it's like out there, and also too, I think it's good for the other guys. I think if he followed who did he follow? He followed Kwiatkowski.
Oh, you can talk to him.
Nah, well,
do you ever grab the mic and talk to him as a teammate, or that's always the director?
That's the director. But Kwiatkowski knows he's back there. That's kind of a cool thing.
Right.
I have my team leaders following me, and it's a good idea. And I'm glad that they picked it up on TV because it's been a while since I've seen somebody do that.
You had some frustrations not seeing the splits. In the past, they've been better about showing the splits where everybody was at certain markers.
Yep.
What was going on with that?
I think that's I don't know if that's because what happens, we watch NBC or NBC Sports, but that's a feed from France Television, right? So I don't know whose responsibility it is to put up the intermediate sprints and the running time at the finish, which is what everybody's most curious about when the guy's charging to the line. It's like, all right, how close is he? So I don't know if there was something lost between the two, or if NBC's just working out the kinks. Certainly when Phil and Paul are getting excited about a guy coming in, you're like, okay, what's the time? And it wasn't coming up. But if it's anything, if I had to guess, it's probably just day one working out the kinks, and they have 20 days till the last TT, so we should be good.
Do they make any adjustments to their time trial setup for soggy conditions like that?
Absolutely.
Tire pressure?
Primarily tire pressure. Great question. I mean, when you see weather like that and slick conditions, and I think the sport now runs softer pressure anyways, but I know we would just take that, you take at least 10 or 20 pounds out of it just to get more rubber on the ground.
And there were times when we did see a bunch of people go down. None as bad as Valverde, who went to the hospital. We haven't heard any updates on that yet. No. But even a couple times, you're like, coming in hot. Like you could see it a mile away.
Yeah. And most of those guys saved it. I mean, my ass would be on the ground. If I lose it like that, it's over, I think.
Just when that... Well, it's one of two things what happened.
I hated wet conditions.
The back tire starts to slide, and then they are good bike handlers, or when that front goes out, it's just over.
Front one goes out, just it's curtains.
you're done.
You're done.
What'd you think of the much anticipated Tony Martin victory not happening?
You know, I expected it to happen. I mean, he's won the World Time Trial Championship 4 times. He won it last year, so he's wearing the rainbow stripes in his home country, which, you know, for him to take the rainbow stripes off, to put on the yellow, to leave Germany tomorrow as the leader of the Tour de France, plenty of motivation. He just didn't have it. He just didn't have it, and he looked good. He was strong through the corners. He was going fast. His typical style. He's like, you know, he pushes a big gear, and not as aero as, I mean, some of these guys now are so unbelievably aero, and the bikes look so aero. But he had his old style, and he was just off. But look, there's nobody more disappointed than him. I mean, I don't know that he was counting his money, but he might have been, and I feel a little bad for him. It would have been cool to see him ride out tomorrow.
What's going through Richie Port's head now?
It's got questions.
He's over 40 seconds back.
Yeah. By the way, that was my pick too. So I'm a little bummed out. My team.
I mean, that's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time.
You just have to have a day in the mountains or something where everybody cracks. Not likely to make it up in any of the other time trials from what we saw today.
I don't know. I mean, he rode a great TT just 2 weeks ago in the Dauphiné. Hey, look, sometimes form in an endurance sport is weird. You know, you can have it 1 week, and then it just starts to go. You have to the Tour. You have to time that form thing perfectly. And Froome, I know he was, you know, he talked a good game, but he might be right. He might have timed it perfectly, and as soon as it starts to crest, your form, your fitness, your strength, it's hard, you can't get it to kick back up again. When it crests, it either plateaus or starts to go away, and it's way too soon to say that. I don't think he took 35 seconds of careful corners. I think that's, like I said earlier, I think that's a question of your condition. But you know, I'm sure he's on the massage table right now going,
what just happened?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. A lot of work to do.
Yeah. But by the way, I mean, they were all, outside of Geraint Thomas, who was exceptional, Froome, who, too, was cautious. But this is the thing. I mean, you can be cautious in the corners. There's all these other straights where you need to be hauling ass. And that was the thing that they pointed out on television, but it was obvious to anybody watching. When Port came in, he was giving it everything. So on those straights, you know, he was also too losing time there, significant time. But look, he's all bunched up. You got Richie Port third, and I'm just going to go off Froome because he's for all intents and purposes, he's the favorite in the yellow jersey now, right? Port 35 seconds down, Quintana 36 seconds down, Dan Martin, who nobody's talked about but was top 10 last year. This route suits him, 37 seconds down. Bardet, the great French Oak, 39. Fabio Aru, 40. And then finally Contador at 42 seconds. And all of those guys that came across the line were trying.
Nobody was just laying it down.
That was if message delivered.
Yeah. So you know what's on their minds right now as they go back to the hotel room. Do they go to the bus and have a team meeting? I mean, this was a big shakeup today in several teams. Obviously, the team meeting for Sky is going to be a lot better for it than anybody else. Do you wait till everyone's back at the hotel? Are people, some of the earlier riders, already back at the hotel?
Now, those guys that go early, unless they get called for doping control, they go straight back because you can't, for the soigneurs and the staff, you got to get in with the rotation of, and even if they're 3 or 4 soigneurs, they got to do a couple massages every night. So those guys are already back. They're getting their massage. They may be already even on to dinner. That's the nature of a TT. It's harder when 9 guys finish at once. Right. You get in the bus, you can break it down in the bus, drive to the hotel, and then you've got to start the whole recovery process, whether it's food or massage or whatever the PT therapy they're doing. It's a lot more hectic when it's a regular stage.
You brought up another thing I had never thought of on the idea of going earlier, which is only going to happen in the opening time trial. Right. More recovery time.
Yep.
A couple more hours. Does that make a difference? 2 more hours?
there are plenty of days where you'd wish you had 2 more hours of sleep or 2 more hours of recovery. But these guys are so fit. I don't think anybody that's there to win yellow is going to say, well, let me go first so I can have 3 more hours with my feet in the air or my legs on the wall.
Hang tight 1 second. I'm going to throw this pillow.
We're working through the kinks here.
Little noise here.
Huh?
Little noise.
We're good.
We're noise.
We're good.
Say hi to everybody on Facebook Live.
Hey, what's up, Facebook Live? Have we got people watching, Dave?
Over 1,000.
All right, cool.
Okay, a lot of people want to know what the situation is for the Americans, and not what we thought. There's only a few in the race. Some people were talking quite a bit about Andrew Talansky. That didn't go well for him today, or as well as it could have. But Taylor Phinney had a pretty decent time trial, and that guy has had some gnarly injuries.
Yeah, I don't think, Taylor's an interesting guy. If you follow the sport of cycling, you know that I've had the fortune of not just watched his career, but almost watched him grow up. I mean, when we started the Trek Livestrong team back in 2008, 2009, he was our first big signing. He was just this. And not that he's not sweet, but he was just a sweet, normal kid. And, he's come into himself, and he's a character. Like, we were sort of sitting there watching all the guys warm up, and they all had headphones on. And we're like, okay, what is, is Richie Port listening to Midnight Oil? Is Bardet listening to Johnny Holiday? And then they go to Finney, and he's got the headphones on. I'm like, I think Taylor's listening to Flock of Seagulls with that hair. But he's...
Describe his hair for those who didn't see it.
It's indescribable.
It's all on top.
But here's the thing. He's a personality. In this sport, I don't care if you have no hair or a grain mohawk or tattoo. The sport, cycling like any other sport, needs personalities, and Taylor is a big personality. But the reality is he's had a hectic few years with crashes, significant injuries. I mean, plenty of people that know that leg injury from U.S. Nationals a few years ago that thought he'd never ride a bike again.
6 months on crutches.
Yeah, and so for him to turn in I think he got 12th place, a great ride, and to keep it upright. I was proud of him because he's the kind of guy that's like, I'm gonna, he just
go for it.
His mind thinks. He has no fear, and when you ride with him, he can ride a bike. He can handle a bike. So, but sometimes those guys that can really handle their bike, and don't need brakes, sometimes you meet this point where you should have hit the brakes. But so he rode a smart race today, and he rode a good race in his first tour, by the way.
And I think there's more to talk about with Taylor Phinney. If you're looking for a fun story to follow. A nice kid. I remember I've met him before. I thought he was pretty funny. He was just kind of quirky and funny. But he comes from great genes.
Yep.
His parents, both great bike racers.
Right. Great athletes. His father was, did many tours, won stages in the tour. His mother was not just a world-class cyclist, was a world-class speed skater. So, nobody's crying for Taylor Phinney's genes.
That's very
He's got some genes.
Anybody else? You haven't brought up. There's one name that I jotted down. You haven't brought up, but I heard you mention him. Castroviejo.
Well, he's the 2-time Spanish TT champ. He's the current Euro TT champ, which I didn't even know they had. I didn't know that. I get it that you have a national championships, but I guess the European Union has a championship as well. This poor guy's probably going, how many of these do I have to do? Like, I won my country's national title, and I know I'm going to go to the World Championships, and I have to do the tour. Then somebody says, "Oh, you got to go to the EU Championships." Anyways, but he was on our list when we met last night with TJ Van Garderen. TJ texted me this morning and said, "Watch out for him." Fun little insight. Super Aero, but didn't have the day that he probably had hoped for. You know who, and I think it leads into our discussion about tomorrow, who had a really good time trial, is Marcel Kittel.
And he's a great sprinter.
And he's a few things. He's again, in just doing the little bit of research that I've done, he's the fastest man in the peloton right now at this present time, and I'm talking these 3 weeks. But this bike race leaves Germany tomorrow and goes to Belgium. Marcel Kittel races for a Belgian team. So he's now, I think we have him at, there's 10 seconds, so there's intermediate sprints, right, tomorrow. He's 16 seconds down.
And it's likely to rain again, and Belgians don't mind that.
They're calling for some occasional showers in Liège at the finish. The finish, as I look at it, it's not too complicated. But if he gets 2 intermediate sprints, which it's hard to do, and then save yourself and try to sprint for the final, the finale, all he needs is 2 intermediates and a stage win, and then he's right there at the yellow jersey. And for a Belgian team with Belgian sponsors in Belgium, that's a big deal.
Do the GC contenders? I mean, some of them are watching it from a hotel when it starts. By the time you get to the end, they're all kind of going, and you're doing your warm up. You don't necessarily know what's going on. Are they able to look at people's form and make a judgment and just kind of size up what's going on? So and so isn't quite ready. So and so's not on form. I'm trying to.
They would have that started at the team presentation. I mean, back in the day, because the team presentation, you're not in a sweatsuit and like covered. You're not covered up. You're in your kit, your jersey, shorts. Team presentation, man. Everybody, it's just total, just dudes checking out dudes. Like, and it can go either way. I mean, somebody's either super lean and you're like, oh my god, did you see how ripped it? Or some guy just looks a little chunky and you're like, okay.
I'm glad you used the word lean, because I think that's good with one dude describing another dude. And Jens Voigt was going, oh, he looks very skinny.
Yeah.
It just sounds
Who was
weird.
he talking about? I can't listen. When
remember.
Jens talks, I don't listen. Who is he talking about?
I don't know. It just sounded funny. It sounded like an SNL
But
sketch.
no, but that is not. I mean, that is what happens. I mean, guys will be, that happened 3 weeks ago. But throughout the season, they're always, sizing up their rivals. And it was interesting because my big rival was always Jan Ulrich, and his battles with body weight and leanness and fitness was well documented.
Skinniness.
Yeah, and so Jan, it was interesting to watch him morph and change, and so. But that's what happens.
All right, let's. I want you to explain something more to the layperson.
Yep.
All right, and I'm talking about time trials versus a long stage. I think you can shed some light on people. And by the way, I'm here because we got to know each other through my radio career, and Austin supporting a lot of your efforts with cancer. You support a lot of stuff with my Bikes for Kids program. So my radio guy, but I did some amateur cycling, and it was not ever very good, but I did do it enough to do. So in amateur Texas cycling, you'll do a 3-stage race,
Right,
which includes one time trial. From my experience,
it's a time trial, a crit, and a road race.
and the time trial is so much more painful and hard to recover from. And I think a lot of people might be watching this and going, oh, that's only a 14K race today.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be so hard.
Right.
Versus sometimes you might be doing 200K, 6 hours on the bike. In my opinion, the time trial is just much tougher to recover from it.
It's not called the race of truth for nothing. I mean, it is truly a man and his machine versus the clock. This effort today won't be a problem for any of those guys. I don't care if you got first or you got last. They will recover from this no problem. Now, in the day, and the only other example we have here is the final one, which is still short in the 22, 23 kilometer range. And that's the day before Paris. It really didn't matter. Back in the day, you'd have 2 50-kilometer, 31-mile time trials. So 2 things happen. One, that's a full 1-hour effort at maximum effort. And 2, you're on a completely different bike. That's the big thing. So you spend, of a 4,000-kilometer race, you spend 3,900 kilometers on one bike with the same position, the same seat height, the same bar height. It's all the same. Then you throw yourself on that bike, right, which we can all watch TV and see is a very different bike. Position's different, much lower. If the TTs are that long, those are hard to recover from. They won't have a problem today, and and the last one doesn't matter because the ride into Paris is chill. But if you start to throw those longer ones into the middle of the race, or even a long team time trial, very, very difficult to recover from.
Let's talk about tomorrow. We're looking into day 2. They've got to be did jitters stop after the first day a little bit?
Yeah.
But it's the first day in the pack situation too.
I think, based on my history and memory and recollection, it's just and I said it yesterday or in the preview show, that just when you go down that ramp, all the bullshit stops. Like all the stuff you have to do that these guys hate to do. They don't want to go to a rider meeting. They don't want to go to a team presentation. They don't want to go to the medical check. They don't want to do any of that. That's a hassle. They don't want to do the press conference. No, none of it. And so just by going down the ramp, it's just sort of emotionally you're like, okay, good. I'm finally starting.
Yeah.
And then you get through that first day, again, a big relief. Some of them have some baggage they're going to have to deal with because they're going to rate their performance and figure out where they are, which we've talked about. Going into day 2.
Wait, before you go into day 2, hold that thought a second. Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to ask somebody this, and you're the perfect person. Who are all those people they shake hands with when they walk off the podium, typically?
So those are typically, they're either dignitaries, sponsors, quote-unquote celebrities. I mean, I remember one year Schwarzenegger came to the tour. He was promoting a new Terminator movie, and they were rolling it out in Europe, and he was up there. And so, yeah, it's just some of them as you watch for 3 weeks, there are people you'll recognize.
Right?
Yeah.
I always wondered what it was. I didn't know if it was the mayor of that town.
Yeah, it might be.
Or...
Maybe the mayor may not get a seat up there, but if you're the ambassador, or, I mean, like my friend, the late, great Robin Williams, he would be up there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just who they deem worthy, I guess. But,
okay. Yeah. I'm glad. I was just wondering all the time. Now, tomorrow it could be soggy again.
Yep.
But this is going to be...
So you asked about the nerves, though. So while we're on our way, or they're on their way, your nerves calm a bit. If they wake up tomorrow, and trust me, they're all looking at the weather, and you have a 200-kilometer day that can be... And again, I said it in the preview show, when that race is outside of France, there's going to be a lot... I don't care if it's raining or not. There's going to be a lot of people on the side of the roads taking selfies with their little poodle, with their picnic, with their rosa, and it complicates things. And so you can't let your guard down. They'll be. It isn't until you get through the first mountain day where there's some true selection, and so with that selection gives you a natural pecking order in the peloton. Like if you're in the group, if you're 30 minutes behind, well, you don't really get to sit at the front all day, right? So it gets a natural pecking order, hierarchy. And so until you get through that, it's going to be nervous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of picked a favorite sprinter to watch. I mean, there's no debate going on there right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going with Kittel tomorrow. I like him primarily because of what I said. I think Quick Step, being a Belgian team, Belgian sponsor, that's always the case. You want to win in your country.
But obviously contesting that would be Sagan.
I think this is not his kind of sprint.
Okay.
And it's too early in the race. I mean, he's him. So I mean, if he could win by a mile, and we'd all be like, oh yeah.
Who has the best freight train for the sprinter right now? Meaning the team that lines it up. We can get more into that when we get to some sprint stages, because I do have a lot of questions about that. I'm amazed by it. But that's the keeping the speed up, lining up your sprinter 4 or 5 guys back, peeling off.
Well, you put him in position, keep him out of trouble, and you can only have 1 or 2 of those trains. I think Quick Step is the best train currently. Look who got 5th today, Matteo Trentin. Talk about a name nobody talked about. That's a hell of a performance. That guy's been racing I think he raced before I ever raced. I mean, so this is that's another statement. So Kittel has the best team for that, and that was. That's really those teams are that's an art when they get that thing lined out and getting all those guys to the front and getting them into position and getting them to communicate.
I'm amazed by that.
And they're going. By the way, you cannot believe how scary that is. Not to be on that train, because that's actually easier. But if you're 30 deep, if you're Chris Froome or Richie Porte and you're 30, 40 deep, going, okay, I have to be in the top 30, because if there's a crash in position 50, I don't want to lose time. I don't want to get caught in a split. You have to be there. But by being there, you're literally scared shitless, because it is so dangerous. I mean, people ask me if I miss cycling. Hell no. It is so terrifying, and they have to be there.
And it's different from the sort of breakaway sprint, completely different
No,
animal.
come on. This is
The freight train sprints are wild.
This is like racing your 3-year-old. I mean, that's a totally different dynamic and speed and intensity and risk.
And again, watch those barriers, those antiquated, outdated barriers.
We're gonna, you got 3 weeks to make change happen, bro. I don't think it's gonna happen, but you can keep going on it.
All right. Any last thoughts from you, from what you saw today? And if not, we'll solicit for some feedback.
You know, the other big honor, it's not really, I guess it is kind of an honor, is the Lanterne Rouge. So maybe every day we should make it a point to honor the Lanterne Rouge. There's the red light. So in the old days, I don't know if they do it anymore, when the train went by, the last car had a red light on it. So the last rider in the Tour is the Lanterne Rouge.
I never knew that.
Yep, Tony Galopin from France on the Belgian team Lotto, whose uncle is Alain Galopin, who's one of the directors of the Trek team, who was an old director of mine. He was Laurent Fignon's soigneur, Fignon's director, part-time director, been in the sport a long time. He had a big crash too. So for now, he's our Lanterne Rouge. Not to end with him, but it's a cool story with his uncle. His uncle's Alain. When he worked for the team, I called him Froggy. He loved it.
Maybe we'll do a whole segment on nicknames that people don't know about.
Yeah, that'll require a lot of research, but
we would love your feedback. If you're checking this out, you're digging it, there's things that I'm not teeing up and asking Lance, that you've always wondered. There's no question too stupid. Right? Sometimes you've been so close to it your whole life that you forget that people don't understand a lot of these little things. Please send those to us. We'd love to get your questions, any comments. If you're enjoying this podcast, send those to stages@WeDoSport, WEDU sport.com.
Yep.
All right, and send your friends to subscribe to this. Post it on your feed. If you want to share it, you've got friends that are cycling buddies. You know who they are. If you think they would enjoy this, send them to. Let me get that right here. And, Nick just sent it to me.
I know. I don't even know it. I want to know. I'm waiting intently.
I know we've been doing a lot of hustling. Stagespodcast.com.
Look at
Stages.
That makes sense.
I know.
Huh?
Sometimes logic.
Even we figured that out.
I just, we've been talking about so much. I was having a brain fart. Stagespodcast.com. Just blast it out on your social media if you're an avid cycling fan of the Tour. You want your friends to follow along with this. You'll know they'll enjoy it, and send those comments. I'm really looking forward to that. Good or bad?
I want the last word. Here. If anybody's in France or Germany tonight or in the next few days, will you please give Bob Roll a cheeseburger? What? Where did he go?
I'm convinced.
That's half the dude that was sitting there last year.
When the cameras are on the cyclist, he's doing push-ups. Did you see how veiny he is?
Buddy, he's ripped.
He's yoked.
Give him a cheeseburger if you're over there. Thanks for tuning in.